All right, I'm going to be starting with the question of the quantity versus quality of parental homework involvement, which was published in the Journal of Educational Research, where we had about 1,700 students in grade 6, so at the beginning of grade 6 to the end of grade 6 in Switzerland. And here we asked the students how often parents help during a week. And then we also only differentiated between supportive and intrusive involvement. So there was no dimension, the structure dimension was not part of the study. And in this study, we focused very much on achievement. So one's measured by a standardized test, and the other measure being a student's academic grades in the school subject German, so which basically at this age means reading. And the analyses were structural equation models, which you can see by the way I present the findings, which of the variables were latent variables and which were manifest variables. So in order to kind of make the results a little bit easier across 5 studies, I decided to depict them in path models rather than have tons of tables. So you can always see in the bottom what the model also controlled for. So here we also control for prior reading achievement, so we can actually look at the change in reading achievement for students' gender, and we have several indicators of students' family background. And so I only present in the path models, and that's also applicable to the other studies. I will only present the variables of interest or the associations of interest. And yes, and these are all standardized regression coefficients. So that also applies to the other studies. So looking at how often parents help with homework, we actually found that students who reported a higher level of parents help actually had lower reading achievement in the standardized test a year later, even controlling for the prior reading achievement test. So kind of we were actually expecting a 0 association. We were not expecting a negative association, but I will kind of explain why we think this is in a moment. So looking at our 2 measures of quality of involvement, again, supportive versus intrusive involvement, we find what previous studies have kind of predicted or are predicting, that supportive involvement, or let's say involvement that was perceived as supportive, had a positive influence on reading achievement a year later, whereas intrusive involvement, when parents helped without it being really needed, had a negative effect. And the exact same pattern was found for German reading, German grades. So it was reflected in the standardized achievement test, but it was also reflected in the actual grades that teachers assigned students during the school year. And again, this was also the case for the 2 indicators of the quality of involvement. So actually, when you look at the correlations between quantity and quality of involvement, you find quite a substantive correlation of, I think, 0.5 between the quantity of involvement and intrusive involvement. So it seems to be the case that the more parents help, the more it is perceived by students as being intrusive. So we don't have any, and that's not something our study can actually answer, what the right amount of help is. And I don't even know if it exists, but it seems to be the case that it actually is the way parents provide the help rather than that they do it every day or that they do it for so many hours per week. So this led us to mainly study the quality of involvement in the other studies.